Music and science go hand in hand, so it's not surprising that many scientists love music, and quite a few are serious amateur musicians. Going back to the 18th century, the astronomer William Herschel, who discovered the planet Uranus, also composed more than 20 symphonies and a number of violin concertos. In modern times, of course, Brian May, guitarist with Queen, went back to academic work after becoming famous as a rock musician to finish his PhD and become involved with astronomy again. Best known of all, Albert Einstein, among the greatest physicists who ever lived, was an accomplished amateur violinist who once said, "If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician." Einstein's mother, Pauline, had him learning violin from a teacher when he was 5, and she personally was a talented pianist, so she taught him to play piano. After he achieved fame through his theories of relativity, and when he was living in Berlin, he bought a Bechstein grand piano, and he was obviously very attached to it because when he decided to leave Germany in 1933 with the rise of the Nazi Party and their persecution of Jews, he had the piano shipped to his new home in Princeton in the United States. Einstein had very definite opinions about composers. At the top of his list were Mozart and Bach. That's probably not surprising given that their music is complex and, especially in Bach's case, very formal in structure. It's natural that a brilliant rational thinker like Einstein would gravitate towards composers whose work was intricate and very logically put together. But he said an interesting thing. "It is impossible for me to say whether Bach or Mozart means more to me. In music, I do not look for logic. I'm quite intuitive on the whole, and know no theories. I never like a work if I cannot intuitively grasp its inner unity." So he wasn't looking to analyse music in a kind of mathematical sense, and I think a lot of scientists and mathematicians who are drawn to music feel the same way. Music provides a counterbalance to, or a release from, the type of thinking they're used to in their professional lives, which is very logical and step by step. Listening to or playing music, they're using different parts of their brains from what they're doing when they're, say, theorizing in physics or solving mathematical equations. Music is inherently mathematical, but the point of it is the experience, which is holistic and in the moment. So which other composers did Einstein enjoy? Schubert, he said, is one of my favourites because of his superlative ability to express emotion and his enormous powers of melodic invention. He also liked Schumann, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, Handel, and some others, but not as universally as he did Mozart and Bach. In fact, he could be quite critical, and in a way that a lot of musically minded folk would probably disagree. For instance, about Handel, he said, "I always feel that Handel is good, even perfect, but that he has a certain shallowness." You don't hear Handel being described as shallow very often. Beethoven, he thought, was too personal, almost naked. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it's certainly an idiosyncratic point of view. One composer he loathed, and for obvious reasons, was Richard Wagner. Wagner was openly anti-Semitic, and his music was a big favourite of the Nazi Party. Einstein admired his inventiveness, but Wagner himself he found, in his words, indescribably offensive, so that for the most part I can listen to him only with disgust. As for his own playing, because of his fame as a scientist, he got the opportunity to meet and play his violin with some leading musicians, including the great Russian pianist Arthur Rubinstein. Einstein was a competent violinist, but if he had one weakness, it was his musical counting. On one occasion, when he and Rubinstein were playing together, the great pianist turned to him and said, "For God's sake, Professor, can't you count to 4? Interestingly, Einstein also played duets with a distinguished scientific friend of his, Max Planck, one of the pioneers of quantum theory. Planck was also a gifted amateur musician who sang and played the piano and organ. Towards the end of his life, in the mid-1950s, Einstein was made president of the Princeton Symphony, and after he died, the orchestra held a memorial concert in his honour. Einstein would have thoroughly approved of it, including as it did a cantata by one of his favourite composers, Bach.